You're tuned in to Room with a View on 102.7. We just heard from LA Mood with the track Highway Fidelity of his new album Breakfast at Sassy's. You may know him from being the drummer in Courtney Barnett's band. It is definitely worth checking out the latest album.
Oh, for sure. Now, we have a great little feature coming up for you. Our button pusher Callum went out and did a documentary on the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse land disputes a couple of years ago. Now, together we've worked to produce this new feature surrounding the issue. It's still ongoing and it's sort of focused on how it's progressed since then. So we'll hear a short station ID and get right into that.
This is C. Montgomery Burns speaking. I know you're a layabout and have no job because you're listening to 3RRR. Now get to work. Find something to do.
In 2017, I made a short documentary named Friends of Point Lonsdale, which was about the community in the borough of Queenscliff fighting back against the local council's desires to develop the land around the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve. In the documentary, I spoke to Lester Hunt, a local who took me on a tour of the Lighthouse Reserve and explained to me the historical significance of some of the structures that would be making way for development.
This is the foundations of the Lighthouse Keeper's residence. It said was demolished about 1901, 2, 3, somewhere after the present lighthouse was built. Both the wooden lighthouse and this were demolished, unfortunately. The wooden lighthouse I can understand, but the residence is such a pity that they knocked that down as well.
I also spoke to Chris Smythe, who works for the Victorian National Parks Association, and he had his own concerns about the combined impact of rising sea levels and development on the remaining natural land in Point Lonsdale and the rest of the borough.
We have a very narrow coastal reserve, and so lots of places, even like Point Lonsdale, have been built too close to the coast. And so that squeeze between the water and the land is really something which is really pressuring that coastal reserve.
Lastly, I spoke to Andrew Sutherland, a retired public servant who was rallying the community via his Facebook page, Friends of the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve, in an effort to push back against the local council's desires to build eco-huts at the base of the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse.
Eco-cabins is just a bullshit way of people saying we're going to smack something right in the middle of the environment that shouldn't actually be there, but we're going to dress it up with a phrase so that people can feel warm and fuzzy about staying there.
By the time I released the documentary, the council had seemed to cool off on development and had announced that they weren't going ahead with the plans to build eco-huts on the site. I caught up with Andrew once again to find out what's been happening in the area since.
I take issue with the fact that the council cooled off, because really the council was cooled off by external parties. The reality was that external pressure applied to the council through the community and through state and federal governments made the council reconsider. But it wasn't something that was done internally. It was very much driven by external pressure which initiated in the community.
Even if the council hadn't really cooled off on their desires to develop the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve, in this time the council did announce an initiative called Destination Queenscliff, which was a plan to develop the Lighthouse Reserve in Queenscliff, which is the town next to Point Lonsdale. The Lighthouse Reserve in Queenscliff is more commonly known as Shortlands Bluff.
The idea was to put 10 two-storey, we call them houses, they call them eco cabins, plus the reworking of the this new cafe, 40-seat cafe.
On the Borough of Queenscliff website, it reads that
the Destination Queenscliff project is designed to place Shortlands Bluff at the heart of Queenscliff's special character, conserving the significant military, maritime, Indigenous and settlement heritage and the stunning beauty of the coastal vista, and rehabilitating vegetation in the area to create a focal point for residents and visitors alike.
Which sounds like an amazing initiative, but in a lot of people's opinion, this was an inaccurate description of what the project would do for the area, and a lot of the local shopkeepers felt that they would be negatively impacted by the development.
The traders would realise that, they struggle. It's this bust and boom cycle of Christmas and Easter being really profitable, but then for the rest of the year it's quite flat. So here was the council, on Crown land, we're going to put these 10 two-storey houses and then a 40-seat cafe, Queenscliff, overlooking the heads. Now, Blind Freddie could tell you that was going to be just, if anyone wanted to stay anywhere, they were probably wanting to stay there. So rather than being some new product, which the council said they were interested in, it was actually competing product. So they wouldn't pay land tax, they wouldn't pay council rates. Everything would be paid by, the maintenance would be paid by the council. So, and this is in direct competition with the local traders, and they took exception to that.
People in the community also worried that the heritage of the town would have to make way for this development.
And so that, as we've discussed, the housing, it has to be sewered, it has to be on the mains power. So where's the eco part? I don't know. Another part of the development was to put a cafe in the bull ring. Now, the bull ring it dates back to World War I, when the council agreed seating should be put there to allow parents to see their children going off to war, on the troop ships. And in military ceremonies are held there, Anzac Day, that sort of stuff, and the commando memorials held there. And the bull ring was to be demolished and then excavated with this cafe to be recessed into the dune. So the council had the intent to do the development and it had the money to do the development, and it announced it was going to do the development there. And again, the consultation with the community was about virtually how big do you want it. There was very little analysis done of the heritage of the site. The ministers and Lisa Neville and Sarah Henderson, while they might have initially thought, this could be good, once they realised that the council hadn't in fact done the analysis they should have done and done the community consultation, particularly with the people they were going to compete against, they realised that the project was going to be just deeply unpopular, and that's why the funding was pulled from the council.
In February this year, the council also backflipped on their decision to leave the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve alone, and they floated their new plans to demolish 3 of the remaining P1 huts at the base of the lighthouse. The P1 huts were originally used by the army, and then towards the conclusion of World War II, they were used to house prisoners of war. At the conclusion of the war, the site was used by an organisation called TOC-H, who ran holiday camps for disadvantaged children. And judging by the comments on the community's Facebook page, people weren't too happy about the council's proposals.
They obviously don't care about the history. They need to realise once it's gone forever.
My mother and her sister were sentimental about the place. It is part of Point Lonsdale history.
It is ludicrous that anyone would continue to obliterate what little history we have left in the region.
Look, that came as a bit of a surprise. There was the council appointed a reference group which comprised a lot of really interested people who had a good understanding of their heritage and history and social aspects of the site. And we went through a very, very long analysis of the site with a consultant paid for by the council, and this was to come up with a master plan for the site.
At the conclusion of this analysis, the council announced their desires to demolish the 3 P1 huts, despite the consultant group, as well as the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, deciding that if the site was to be promoted and preserved, then the huts could be left there and reskinned to make them look like the original P1 huts.
We were very concerned that they be preserved because they helped tell our story, rather than having a plaque. It's back to this, what I was talking about before. You can't just have static history. You've got to have it somehow active, and the huts then tell a great story about how the site was used by the army and then all these other groups.
To combat this continued push for development, Andrew and other members of the community are continuing to push to get Shortlands Bluff and the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve heritage listed, which they believe will have the same desired results as Destination Queenscliff, but without any of the negative impacts on heritage and the local economy. This is not her voice, but in 2017, local MP at the time, Sarah Henderson, shared Andrew's sentiment and told the Geelong Advertiser that she had
long been an advocate for this precinct to receive National Heritage listing.
She continued on to say that
such recognition would not only provide greater protection of the site, but also open up new opportunities for funding to maintain and improve the precinct.
Looking towards the future, Andrew is very confident that the Borough of Queenscliff will continue to thrive without the need for commercial development.
The next couple of years are really important down there. A lot of the structures which date back to World War I are now coming to the end of their lives. The council, and take my hat off to them, they've started work on the preservation of one of the World War I searchlight establishments, but again, there's no point in having these objects static in the landscape. You need people to get up there and have a look at them, so all the pathways need to be upgraded. In 5 years, my view would be that, and I'd be willing to bet that Point Lonsdale, Point Nepean, Queenscliff headland will become national heritage. And if that's the case, then it should be a much better outcome there, and the site will be preserved and people will want to go there.
When I filmed the documentary in 2017, one thing Andrew said about the Lighthouse Reserve really stuck with me and continued to stick with me throughout the making of this feature.
The area, if it is fixed up properly, will act as a tourist beacon in its own right.
Well, this was the thing, the council originally said about the spa development that was to go there. It was all about creating a wellness centre, and one of the guys down there, Merv, said, well, why would you want to build a wellness centre? The whole place is a wellness centre.
You're listening to 3RRR 102.7. Thanks very much to Callum for that interesting package there. Now we'll give you permission to speak here, Callum. Can you tell us a bit more about, if people were wanting to find out a bit more about this issue?
Well, the original documentary is just on YouTube. If you search up Friends of Point Lonsdale, it'll pop up. And for even more comprehensive information, I'd go to the Facebook page, which is Friends of the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve.
Thanks for that, Callum. And now we will throw it to a tune. Here's Pinch Points with their single Shibboleth from their upcoming LP, Moving Parts.